Hello. Welcome everybody to a week of mood reading. It is mid-month and I didn't do a TBR for this month, not really. I had like a few books on a list that I want to read. If they don't align with my mood, I'm not gonna read them. I was gonna do a mood reading vlog last week and then I didn't know what I wanted to read, so I chose prompts and that kind of put me in a reading mood, which is good. So we're going to start with Narnia, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. I'm reading these in the order that they have them on these copies I have. I guess there's a couple of orders that you can read them in, and I am choosing the one that is chronological to the story. I did Magician's Nephew, and then Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and then The Horse and His Boy, and then Prince Caspian, and now Voyage of the Dawn Treader. I did watch this movie in theaters, and then never again. So Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and Prince Caspian, we owned the DVDs growing up and I watched them all the time. So like reading them felt very close to the films and I was really into them. The other two that I read I haven't loved, and I think that's mostly because I couldn't feel the nostalgia about it that I did for the other ones. We're gonna start with this week. I'm excited to start reading it. I'm not gonna start right now. It's the morning. I gotta go to work pretty quick here, but it should be a casual week. Hopefully I read 2 or 3 books. I'm not sure how it will look yet, but mood reading, always fun. So thanks for coming. Hope you stick around. Hi, pretty. Hi, I don't really want face licks right now. It's been a couple of days, but I am finished The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. I came so close to finishing this last night in bed, I just could not keep my eyes open, so I finished it this morning. Very good. I know this is my favorite of all of the Narnia books so far that I've read. If you don't know the story of The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, the movie I think wasn't great. Zach said he rewatched it recently and it was worse than he remembered, so I'm gonna not do that. So it is based on the Pevensey siblings' cousin you start with, named Eustace, and we're gonna be playing while we talk. Edmund and Lucy are staying at his and his parents' house for the summer holidays, and he is the worst kid in the world. He is worse than Edmund in Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Like, he is unbearable. So they go to Narnia, and Eustace is kind of unbearable throughout the first half of the book. Doesn't want to help with anything, and doesn't want to do anything, and doesn't believe in anybody, and keeps talking about contacting the British consul, but obviously they're in Narnia, not Britain. And Prince Caspian is in this, which I was not expecting, because I didn't remember that. And they're on a boat the whole time, because Caspian, I think it's been 3 years since they were there last time, and Caspian's like, oh, I swore to find these 7 lords that my uncle banished when he became king, that my father was friends with. So he's like, I have to go east where he banished them to and find them. So they go to all of these islands. I think there's also about 7 islands. The pacing of this book, I would say, is the best out of all of them for sure. And I think that's why I like it the most, because just when you think that they've been at an island too long and it gets a little bit slow, they move on. And I have a theory that I haven't looked up or fleshed out too much, but that the 7 lords maybe represent the 7 deadly sins, or maybe the islands do, because there's like an island of darkness and an island of voices. But now I'm wondering if it's more like a purgatory thing, because when they get all the way east to where Aslan is, it's supposed to be like heaven. I feel like I can't say too much about it, because obviously it's a part of a series and it's a little bit far into the series. I recommend that people read the Narnia books. I am really enjoying them and they're very fun. And Reepicheep, I kept saying Reepicheep, but I think his name is Reepicheep, is easily my favorite character in this book. He's the most well-rounded character. He is a talking mouse, just so you know, but he's the most well-rounded, and it's one of these things where he is so keen to fight for people's honor that when he says an option that isn't fighting, they're like, we should listen to him, because if he could fight, he would. Zach's favorite island is the one with the invisible people on it. So that's kind of a fun little nugget for you to have. That's one of the middle islands they go to. And there's like a dragon and a sea serpent and sea people that I would say are kind of like mermaidy. Anyway, it's very good, very fun. It gave me that lighthearted adventure that I was looking for, and I should read the next 2 pretty quick here, but not right away. So because I read that, I was in a huge fantasy mood. I finished that this morning and I was like, you know what? I just want to pick up like an actual deep fantasy book. Mind you, it was 6:30 in the morning, but I decided to start The Well of Ascension, which is the 2nd book in the Mistborn series. And I've read the first one like, what, 3 months ago-ish, I want to say. And I could have picked this. Oh, now they're being quite loud. I'll wait. You need the higher ground? Yeah, I think I could have picked this with a couple of the prompts in my last reading blog that I posted a couple of weeks ago now, right? Yes. And I was like, oh, I really don't want to read this book. And then all of a sudden, at 6:30 a.m., I was like, yeah, bring it on. I want to read it. So I read the first 2 chapters. I instantly got confused and was like, I don't remember who any of these characters are. And then I remembered after I finished the first book, there is an index in the back with all of the terms and all of the names of everybody. So that helped already. What all the medals do, who all of the people are, what all of the terms mean. So that I'm going to use probably a lot in the first part of this book as I kind of get into it and try to remember what I'm reading. The ending to book 1 was crazy and made me cry. I thought that it was a lie and that something would come out in the beginning of this one to prove it false, and it hasn't yet. So it is 6:30 p.m. The dogs have been walked and played with. I say that, but now she's showing some restlessness. So if she brings me a toy, we'll play some more. Dinner's been eaten. I even scrubbed the big pots after I cooked. I'm ready to just kind of dig in. Let's get into it. It's the next day, and I am 150 pages into The Well of Ascension, just about to start chapter 14, and I just have to stop and talk about it because the setup to this book is kind of phenomenal because I was so worried about remembering all of the characters, and jumping back in, this takes place a year after the end of the first book. Everything is reintroduced in a very smart way so that I kind of remember who everybody is, the dynamics that everybody has, and where we left off with the last one without completely reiterating everything, but it still kind of hones in on the important facts, which I think is amazing. So I really love that. I think I highly suggest the series, even though I'm only really partway into book 2. I think if you want to read something that's a little bit higher fantasy and maybe a more difficult concept to grasp, but once you have it, it's super interesting and gripping. The idea of a found family and a crew coming together, it's just an amazing book, okay? I said this with the first one. People really compare this series to Six of Crows duology. I agree to some extent, but this is just a more adult version. I didn't love Six of Crows as much as everybody else seemed to, but this I can't get enough of. So if you are not sure what it's about at all, it's a little bit difficult to explain. Zach even earlier was like, oh, what are you reading? And I kind of started to explain it. He was like, what? Because they use metals like tin and copper and gold. There are these allomancers with these special skills, and Vin, our main character, is a Mistborn, which means she can use all of the metals and all of the skills, and they ingest them, and then they can do certain things with that power. It's such a weird concept to write about, but it's super interesting. Vin is our main character, and in the first book you kind of see her overcoming her awful childhood and living on the streets and working with a crew that just completely didn't care for her and where she was treated very poorly, and coming into this new crew doing this huge heist and this huge job in book 1, and just kind of finding who she is as a person. And she was a kind of a difficult main character for me to like, and I still a little bit feel that way. I remember in book 1 there was a lot of character development towards the end, and now she's kind of regressing a little bit, but it makes sense. This is the aftermath of their execution of their big job in book 1. There are other armies coming towards them because they all want to have access to the store of this really expensive metal and really powerful metal for Mistborns that only Mistborns can use. And there's kind of this impending war coming, and it's very interesting, and I'm really enjoying it. And with Vin, there's a bit of a romance that started in book 1. I'm not going to say who it's with, because if I remember correctly, I think there maybe were a couple of options. It's a bit weird, the romance part, and it's just kind of casually put in, which I like because it's not a romantasy at all. Don't read this thinking that the romance is a huge part, because it's totally not. It's not my favorite part anyway. We kind of left the last book with a bit of the crew breaking up and going their separate ways, but staying in contact, not falling out. But it's kind of interesting to see them coming back, and it's reunion right now, which is really fun. And I'm very excited to see specifically where Sazed, I think is how you say his name. I'm really excited to see where his story goes, because he was easily one of my favorite characters from the first book, and he is continuing to be one of my favorite characters in this book. He's just so interesting. He uses the metals in a different way. I'm also just thinking, I don't know what the Well of Ascension is. A literal well? Or it's totally something completely different? I have no idea. I'm just now thinking about the title of this book. I thought that we were being betrayed a little bit by a situation that just happened. And that's why I had to come and update you, because things are happening all of a sudden at the end of part 1 and the beginning of part 2. Some clashing of ideas going on, but there are some different dynamics that I'm curious to see how they go, because a couple of more people have come in since the end. Near the end of the first book. I also, with Vin's character regression, I'm curious what's going to happen, because she is treating a character named Orsur quite poorly. They have some contentment towards her because of that, I think. So I'm curious to see if she improves, because it doesn't really stay in line with her character that we saw in the first book, in my opinion. It is bothering me because this character does a lot for her and she's not really recognizing that. Maybe it's just a lack of trust. She does take a long time to trust people, so that makes sense. Anyway, I'm anticipating a lot of backstabbing, a lot of power grabbing. We now know that there is an imposter. I think that that's going to be a main plot line throughout this book. There is an imposter and we don't know who it is. And I'm so curious how that's going to come in. It's kind of like a little mystery element, which is fun. I have my guesses already and I'm guessing they're all wrong, because I have been wrong numerous times about the first book. So I'm sure that's going to happen again. But I'm going to read as much as I can today. Once again, it is almost 5. So maybe I'll just eat dinner now and get it over with. And then just kind of read all night. Second, I might watch Doctor Who today. I'm not sure. It's 5 minutes later, and it's just been confirmed that the Well of Ascension is a place. So don't need to question that anymore. It's the next day. I am just here with the quickest of updates. I got almost halfway. I just finished part 2. Let's see, I'm about to start chapter 29, 340 pages in. I had just got to part 2 and I was like, oh, when I get to part 2, I'll go to sleep. And I finished it, and it was one of those weird little mid-book cliffhangers where I was like, I'm kind of angry at what just happened, and I know that if I don't keep going, I'm actually not gonna want to read it for like the next week. Like, I won't want to pick this book back up if I leave off here. So I read one more chapter hoping that it would clear some things up, and it did. So that was the smart move on my part. So now I kind of just want to keep going. It is like 7:30 a.m. I have an hour until I start work. I gotta do like my normal morning Animal Crossing and some stuff, but I kind of just want to read. It's so good. There is definitely some growth with Vin in the way that she was treating other people and the way that she is thinking about herself. And I really actually am enjoying that character growth. And we already know that she's important, but something may be happening that is making her even more important. Again, there are so many characters, but I actually think that they are portrayed better collectively in this book than the first one as well. But maybe that's just because we know them more. I would just say, yeah, the blending of characters is just so well done. And I really, 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 really like it. There is one new character who is quite manipulative. There's some manipulation going on that is actually making me feel icky. And there were a couple of times when it was happening and I actually just wanted to skip that section. And I was like, I can't do it. I have to read it, but I don't want to. And I hope that this person knows that they're being manipulated, because it doesn't really read like they do, but I hope that it turns out to be like some kind of cool double cross. This new character is icky and I don't like them. I think that's all my updates. It is a few days later and I am finally done The Brick. It was touch and go for a little bit there. Pretty much all weekend I listened to the audiobook. 1, because I had shit to do, but 2, it was getting a little bit boring and slow. And I hate to say that. I basically listened while I did every task imaginable, including like I played some Sims while I listened, I did some laundry, I cooked dinner, I cleaned the house, I walked the dogs, all while listening to the audiobook until Spotify told me I was out of listening minutes. And it's like a 16-week wait from the library. So then I was like, hey, I'm just gonna check in, I'm gonna finish this book. And it got good again. Don't worry. But it was touch and go for a little bit in the middle there. I think the first 350 pages and the last 100 pages, I would rate a 5-star. The middle, a 3. So I have rounded and I am rating The Well of Ascension 4 stars. While I was in the middle for a little bit, I was like, oh, I'm not going to want to read the third one yet. Like, I'm going to need a little bit of a break. And then I finished and I'm like, oh, I have so many questions. I might have to read the third one soon. So I'm not sure when I'm going to read it. This year. I'll read it this year. I feel like that's something I can commit to. Yeah, I think one of my main problems when it got a little bit boring, Vin is continuously described as somebody who finds it difficult to trust people, which is totally understandable given her past. But then she kind of blindly trusted somebody who she barely knew, this new character. So that was a little bit annoying. It was just we were losing some character growth. It was the same cycle. It got a little bit annoying. There was one jaw-dropping moment while I was actually walking the dogs. I like literally was like, stopped in my tracks because something huge happened that I was not expecting, and I almost want to go back and read chapters with this character in it again. I will say that listening to the audiobook taught me that I'm saying Sazed wrong. I was saying Sazed. Sazed continued to be one of my favorite characters throughout the book. I also really liked Orsur. The ending of the book got really good, and I really appreciated it, and the writing is still good. Like, there's nothing about the writing that I dislike, and there was actually less hand-to-hand combat in this book, which I appreciate. It was a little bit more nuanced. Some little aspects brought in that were really interesting, and Vin learned a lot about herself and about her powers, which is good. You would hope that there's some growth there too, so it doesn't just stay stagnant. 4 stars. I really liked The Well of Ascension. I do highly recommend. Still a wonderful concept. I think it's cool that it's something that I can't really compare to anything else I've read. So we are going to start our 3rd and final book today. I have decided that this mood reading has kind of turned into a continuing fantasy series video. Interesting, because I feel like reading Emily Wilde, number 3, Compendium of Lost Tales. This feels like the right book to read after a high-stakes fantasy. A cozy, low-stakes fantasy feels right. If you don't know, this is the 3rd book in the Emily Wilde series. I have the first 2 right behind me there. We had a very sunny April, but it is going to rain and pour all week, as it has been for the past week. So this feels comfortable to read in this weather. I just want to be cozy. I want to read some cozy fantasy. So I hope I'm picking the right time to read this, because I think vibes matter for these books because they're lower plot. I don't know what this 3rd one is about. The 2nd book, Emily went to Wendell's birthplace and his hometown and learned a lot more about him. So I'm curious what will happen in the 3rd one, because she is growing in importance in the fairy world. These books are so fun for like actually honing in on that fairy theme of like they're sneaky and they're like all different kinds, and she's trying to just figure out what they all are and do her research. Yeah, she's a very interesting character. So this is book 3. So it's the next day, and I got like 80 pages in yesterday and then read a little bit this morning. So I'm on page 100 of the Compendium of Lost Tales. Compendium. I don't like this word. And I think it might be my favorite in the trilogy so far. At this point, that is how I feel. I would say, yeah, in the first 2, Emily was pretty much just observing the fairies from afar and like coming up with her hypotheses about how they live their life and trying to write this book. And now she's living amongst the fairies in this book and standing by some of her earlier ideas, but also like everything is different than she expected to some extent. What I thought was going to be the whole point of the book happens in the first like 60 pages. Now I'm not really sure where it's going to go from here. I think we're just not trusting any characters. I don't trust any of them. It is really fun. I'm having a good time. Still not much is happening. Like, it is still an Emily Wilde book. Like, it's still a cozy fantasy. There's not too much going on. Nothing is shocking. It's just whimsical, and it feels kind of, this one specifically feels very like Alice in Wonderland. Like a little bit of a drug trip, and you're like trying to figure out what the hell is going on. I still do wish it was written as like a 3rd person POV novel rather than a diary. I don't prefer any diary type books. I'm gonna keep going. I hope it continues to be my favorite of the 3. I think that would be really fun. Dogs are fed and walked. I'm fed and walked. Zach is out for the night, so we are reading as long as we can. So I'm done. Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales. I stand by what I said in my last update. This is easily my favorite book in the trilogy. I think it was so much fun. The pacing and the characters building on the stories that we already knew and expanding on things and not overly explaining the old things. I just absolutely loved it. I'm giving this 4.5 stars easily. It's not quite 5 stars because there were a few moments where I got distracted with my phone and I was like not totally engrossed in the story. And I still think that that's because it's written as a diary instead of classic novel style. But I absolutely loved this book, and I am so happy that I finally read it. Though it was supposed to rain all week, and it rained the first day that I read this, and now it's 2 days later, and it's been sunny. First, I thought there was just one callback to the first book, and I was like, ooh, super interesting, because it's actually not something that I really focused on from the first book. And then there were a couple of more much larger ones that were super fun. The title comes from Emily researching some old fairy tales to figure out how her and Wendell can accomplish this large feat that they have. They have encountered a pretty large problem that they need to solve, and so she is going her scholarly ways. So it is still kind of fairy from afar, like the first two, but better in the fact that they're like in it the entire time. And it's fun. It's more adventurous than the other ones. I absolutely loved it. Like, completely loved it. It also felt like it should have been done about 100 pages before the end of the book, which I was a little bit concerned about in that moment, because when I've thought that before, I'm like, oh, they should just end this. But the last 100 pages pleasantly surprised me. They were important, interesting, and dynamic. Like, maybe the best part of the book? Maybe not. Yeah, maybe. Did I say in my last update that what I thought was the point of the book happened in the first 60 pages, and then again, thinking it's going to end at page 270, and then there's another 100 pages that need to be there? Like, very cool pacing and story flow. I'm kind of surprised that I actually found a lot of parallels between this and The Well of Ascension, which I was not expecting to, and I don't think I would have if I hadn't just read it right before this. Not like the overarching story, but just blunt, strong female character kind of leads the charge. The way that Vin in The Well of Ascension and Emily in this book love their partner is very similar. Okay, without any spoilers, like an important ceremony was carried out in the same way and had some parallels there. The entire book for both of them, I was debating who we shouldn't trust as readers, and that feeling kind of was the same. Just like questions of royalty and lineage and birthright, all of that was quite similar. I don't know, it's kind of fun to read like a high stakes 800-page fantasy and then a low stakes 300-page fantasy and find parallels between them. I think that's super fun. So for a week of mood reading, for that to be the outcome, I actually really enjoy that. That ends this video. 2 4 stars and 1 4.5 star. That's kind of incredible. I'm really glad you came, and I will see you next week with another video. Bye.